Hi everyone. The chair will be here in just a minute. He's just having some technical difficulties, so we'll start in a bit.
Hi everyone, sorry about that. Welcome to February's Student Council. I'm Matthew, the Student Council Chair, and since this is the first Student Council meeting since Handforth Parish Council, I thought I'd just mention quickly at the start that no one should challenge my authority, and my authority won't be challenged, like in that meeting. If you don't know what that meeting is, that would have sounded quite dictatorial. Someone said it'd be funny, never mind. And so we'll go on with housekeeping first of all. So welcome to the meeting, everyone. Ensure that your mic is muted and your camera is off unless speaking. If you want to speak, please use the raise hand function and then put your name and committee in the chat. Please only use the chat for documenting who is speaking. The chat will not be counted in discussion, with the exception of people wishing to speak but their mic isn't working. Please don't mute me, although I think we have finally fixed the muting problem, which is brilliant. Council documents can be found in the file section of the team group. We're streaming live on Facebook, and this will be recorded. So we're actually not on Facebook tonight, we're on YouTube. So this will be recorded, and so please ensure that you use appropriate language and do not swear. And a reminder that all speeches must be directed at me, the chair, and not other councillors. The Senior Vice Principal for the University, Carl Leidecker, is holding an accountability session at 5:30. Yeah, and that's a fixed time. So we'll stop whatever we're doing and we'll go to him. He'll have a short presentation and that's sort of stuff as well. I'll mix things up a bit and I'll mention some stuff I've been asked to talk about at the start, not just at the end while everyone's here. But elections are coming up, as Cecilia is very obviously advertising this evening. So we need to get people to nominate themselves. And if anyone wishes to nominate, they can get in touch with Ellie at AUSA reps at avdn.ac.uk. Any questions at all? There's also candidate workshops this week. I believe there was one earlier today. There'll be ones throughout the week, and they're being advertised on AUSA's social media as well. What else? AGM's coming up as well. That's on the 19th of March. Someone nod. Yeah, 19th. It sounds familiar. We're going to go with 19th. Someone will tell me off. So please submit motions. You can submit them to me, sa.chair@abdn.ac.uk, or Ellie, AUSA reps as well. And if you need any help, please let us know. Remember, AGM is sort of a time where we get a lot more people involved. So and some quite big things have happened at AGM in the past. So feel free to go wild, and we can sort of temper your expectations a bit as well once you submit them to us. We also need NUS Liberation delegates. This is for the forums. Well, more towards the forums. I believe anyone can do it. We need NUS Liberation delegates. We're still looking for trans, BAME women's, and BAME women delegates. Is that not just the same, Ellie? Have you put a typo here? Ellie will get in touch and let me know whether that's the same or not. And also... oh, okay. She means BAME and BAME woman.
So I mean, we need a BAME representative, a BAME woman representative, a woman representative, and a trans representative. Sorry, it could have been written better.
There's at least 3 commas missing here, Ellie, but never mind. Thank you anyway. And sign up as well for the enhanced transcript pathway on Careers Connect as well. The deadline for that is in May. So get it in soon because it's February as well. But yeah, apologies this evening. They come from Alexandra O'Donnell and Louise, who is the Vice President for Welfare. And then we can move swiftly, unless anyone has any questions at this stage, anything they want to raise. No. Nice one. We can move then on to the approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which was in January. The minutes are written up in the papers for this evening, so you can pop a vote up, Ellie. That vote will go up in the chat, and also I believe will pop up on your screen now because we have advanced. Maybe
when my computer starts working, it will. 2 seconds.
We'll fill time. Brilliant. You can still submit questions to ask Carl Leidecker, the Senior Vice Principal, as well. Oh, it's popped up. There we are. You can vote to approve the minutes from the last meeting. It's for, against, or abstention. There appears to be some issue with the voting, I believe, from the 80 messages that have just come through. I can't actually see. How do I mute the chat? For me, not for everyone, but just for me. Harnham, you put your hand up? No?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, it's saying unable to submit vote, and judging by the billion of messages that have come through, I'm not the only one.
This is either a conspiracy by Ellie to undermine Student Council or a technical problem. So I think we have popped a link in the chat, but we can't see the chat because the chat's been muted. So you need to unmute the chat so we can see the chat, and then it works.
Seriously, work theories are always entertaining.
There we are. You see? We'll give a couple more minutes for people just to click on the link if they've still not clicked on the link. Is that everyone that's voted? Okay. So the results of that is that we've decided to approve the minutes from the last meeting with 49 for, 0 against, and 8 abstentions. So then we can move on to co-options. I believe we have some co-options. Does anyone wish to speak on this, or are we okay just to move straight to a vote? If you want to speak, you can put your hand up now. If not, then I believe we can just move to a vote. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so we'll just move to a vote, and you can either vote to accept the co-options, vote against them, or abstain. Still doesn't work. We are clearly having issues with the voting this evening. I'm sure this will get fixed. Okay, so the link has been popped in the chat again. You can vote there. I believe it's all the same. So if you voted in one, it all links to the same results. Ellie will correct me if I'm wrong, but it does all link together.
You are correct. It does link all together. It's the same thing. It's just that.
So no one can vote twice, or your vote, if you voted in the card, isn't counted. It's still counted if you don't click on the link. So we're all good. Okay, we got the results of that. There we are. So those co-options, as listed in the papers for this evening, have been accepted with 51 votes for, 3 against, and 7 abstentions. There we go. Okay, thank you. And then we move swiftly on to item number 5 on the agenda, and that is policy updates. This is a space on the agenda where the sabbatical officers can update Student Council on any work which has been done on the policies which have been passed by Student Council. And we'll go first to Cecilia. Cecilia? Policy update.
David has to unmute her.
Oh. Could you do your policy update in sort of like signs? Could you? Just hold up a bit of paper. Yeah. No, she's got no policy update. Is that correct?
You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Cecilia, Student President. I don't have any policy update. I've been on annual leave.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. And then we go to Andre.
I also don't have any policy update, Andre, the Vice President for Education, and I also haven't included my work report, so if there's going to be any questions, I can take them, but if there's none, then I can just give an oral update.
Any questions for Andre? No? Okay. We'll just move on then, if that's okay with you, Andre.
Yeah.
Cool. Louise isn't here this evening, so Radine.
So I do have a slight policy update. It's in regards to the climate emergency policy. So essentially, one of the things we're looking at is the declaration of the climate emergency that AUSA has made, which speaks about AUSA wanting to achieve carbon neutrality by 2025. As we're doing a joint campaign with the university in regards to Road to Net Zero, we're looking into how we're going to be able to achieve the goal that we've placed on ourselves, given that we do not have our own building. We're using a building from the university, so how can we achieve carbon neutrality? So I've been working with Stefan, our sustainability coordinator, on that, and I'll hopefully provide updates at the next Student Council if we've managed to organise that.
Bro, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? No one's got any questions. Okay. We can then move on to the student partnership agreement update. Cecilia?
Cecilia, Student President. I don't have one on my areas because I've been on annual leave. However, there has been meetings between AUSA and the Student Experience to look at reviewing the process of the SPA and how we go forward with that, as it's meant to be completely renewed for the next sabbatical team. So exciting stuff, and that's another reason we should run in the election.
Any of the other sabbaticals want to talk on this, or are we good?
I can talk very quickly. It's just in regards to with the student partnership agreement and the work towards the fossil divestment in fossil fuels. So the divestment group, and as part of the ENU committee, have been meeting with Carl, who is going to be at the Q&A today. So there has been some progress with that. There's been no formal announcement just yet being made by the university, but I've been sitting on the finance committee representing the intention to divest from fossil fuels, and they have informally stated that they do plan on having an idea of around 5 years so to divest. So yeah, if there are any questions, please let me know.
Cool. Any questions? Nope. And Andre, take it you don't have anything to come in on that?
Not at the moment, but I can provide an update to the next council because
Brilliant.
there will be some stuff done by then.
Okay, thank you. Then we go on to the sabbatical officer accountability session. This section is an opportunity for all of the sabbatical officers to provide an update on the work they have undertaken since the last student council meeting. We'll hear from each of the officers present, and there will be the opportunity for councillors to ask questions of the officers after they have provided their update. So we go to Cecilia first. Thanks.
Cecilia, student president, as I mentioned, been on LLE, so apologies that there's no work report. I only came back yesterday, so any questions, really appreciate them. And the big things before I went off was I assisted Andre and everyone else with the no detriment policy, and also providing some assistance with the housing campaign. As everyone knows, we got the rent rebates and now we're pushing to get an earlier date. We've also had over 250 responses to the housing survey, which is really great. And we're working with the university to hopefully get uni halls to be used for quarantine rather than having to pay £1,750 to go to a hotel. And the Blues Committee met yesterday to review the nominations. So hopefully all the sports students who applied for that will get their responses soon. We've also, of course, had the rectorship election has gone down. There were no nominations. So the process is being reviewed now so we can actually get some next time that is being run. On something I work specifically on, and I'm going to apologize to the student who contacted me about this because I missed out in my handover when I went off because I was ill and went off earlier. I've been working with the university to get more gender choices on the student hub. Had some progress on that, but in my next work report I'll be able to give like a full rundown on how it's going to get more gender choices onto the student hub and student records. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Any questions? No. Oh, Daniel. Daniel, yeah. It'll just be 2 seconds. We are waiting on the unmuting. There we go.
Yeah, I got it. Cheers for that. Yeah, I just had a question for the student president regarding something that I discussed with her quite a while back now, actually. But it was with regard to the appointments committee for the trustees at AUSA. I was wondering if you could give us a rundown on who is actually currently part of that committee, as I know that it says 2 councillors should be members of the appointments committee, and I was informed that it was full, so I was just wondering who all of the people sitting on it currently were.
So all the members currently, it is myself, the university nominated trustee, which is Ruth Taylor. We got John, yeah, his name is John, he's an external trustee, and myself, of course. And a student councillor is Alisa Quester, who's the vice chair of the E&E committee. And then I do believe that a student councillor is Jack Boag, but I've been told that he's actually not a councillor this year. So once, Daniel, when you contacted me, I looked into it and found out he wasn't a councillor anymore. I thought he was on the communities committee. So he's unfortunately been booted out now. So once we are looking for more trustee recruitment, we will be contacting council for another nomination. Obviously, they'll have to be considerate of a gender balance. And as I've only got about 3 months left as sabbatical, whoever takes over after me will that influence if we can recruit from council. Does that make sense?
It does. Can I continue with a line of questioning on this, please? Okay. I was wondering if I could ask the student president then how the appointments committee members are chosen.
I sent out an email to council. No, I went to council, asked who wants to volunteer, and then these 2 students were the first ones to respond. This is normally how we do it. We ask volunteers, and then it's first come, first served with consideration for gender balance, which means that if we need more people who identify as female, but let's say Matthew and Daniel will contact me first, I would have to say, unfortunately, one of you can't do it because we actually do require someone who identifies as female. So that's the gist of it.
Okay, I understand. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Thanks, Daniel. Nope. Perfect. Okay. Just keeping an eye on the time because we've got our Q&A session coming up in 5 minutes. So we'll go to Andre and see if we can squeeze in your accountability session as well.
Hi, so Andre, Vice President for Education. So most of my work since my last work report was regarding the no detriment policy. So I've been meeting with Ruth Taylor and some other senior staff nearly every day. And I've been working with the media and with local MSPs and other people on how we can sort of boost the chances of this getting through. So with some of the conveners, I've already met with the schools as well. So we've had the discussions around, what they thought was wrong with the original policy and how sort of we go forward. So that's practically what I've been doing for the past month.
Okay, brilliant. Any questions? Thanks, Andre. Any questions? Nope. Okay, thank you for that. And then I guess we can squeeze in Radine as well.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Radine, Vice President for Communities. So just very quickly, I've been working on the Road to Net Zero campaign. It has been slightly delayed because of the COVID-19 restrictions, but parts of the AUSA website have already been updated to reflect the campaign. We've also been working on the student workers guide with Lee. So the Communities Committee have sent in a few notes to update the workers guide. So it will now include a section on how to get a job and also how to spot scams. And also it'll include the Equality Act of 2010. We've also been working on the sock bowl. So Kieran and the rest of the activities team have been working really hard on the sock bowl, so that was really successful. And I've met with several students, the City Council and other external organisations in regards to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And if other students would like to get into contact with me with that, please feel free to do so. And I've also been assisting with the housing campaign with Louise, and I've been covering Cecilia while she's been on annual leave. So, yeah. If there are any questions, please let me know.
And Cecilia.
Celia, Student President, I do have a question for the VP Communities. What decisions did you get to make as acting president when I was gone?
Well, I've just been attending most of your meetings, to be fair, which actually, speaking of which, there is one thing I wanted to update, which was the university did mention at one of the meetings that they were considering looking into a potential system where they will move things out of flats for students that are struggling in terms of getting stuff out of flats if they're are currently paying rent in Aberdeen but don't have the means to do so. But that's something in the very early stages. But that was student support that was looking into that.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. We're going to come back to questions for Radine after, because I've just seen that the Senior Vice Principal, Carl Laydeck, has just joined us. Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, absolutely. Though I'm seeing that it says, I can share content now. Oh, that's fine. I was slightly worried for a moment I wouldn't be able to share any content. But yes, I'm here. Hi, good to see you all.
Hello. I'm Matthew, the Chair of Student Council. So I believe you're giving a short presentation and then we're opening up to questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
So
I've got a couple of slides that sorry, it's just quite complicated to share that. Hang on, because I'm not. Let me just. I need to just shut a few different windows down here to make sure I can find the right one.
That's okay, no problem.
Can you see that?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, pop it into. There, that should be working now. Is that good?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to come along today. I thought I would just talk about a couple of different things. Say a little bit about Aberdeen 2040, which I was responsible as Senior Vice Principal for coordinating the development of. We launched that just last year, February 2020, as our 20-year vision. And I think it's still important that we keep going back to it and making sure that we're working within that framework. We've obviously had to delay some aspects of the implementation, but I think it's really important we have that at the forefront of our minds all the time, really, as we develop the university over the next period. I want to say a little bit as well about pandemic response, partly because my role as chair of the campus planning group means that I've been sort of at the heart of our response to the pandemic. So I can say a little bit about that and also about the current issues that we're facing. I know a number of questions have been pre-submitted that centre on the response to the pandemic at the moment. And of course, Scottish Government today made some quite major announcements about our road out of the current lockdown as well. So I thought I might say a little bit about that piece of work. And then I've got some pre-submitted questions, but it might be better to just, if I just speak briefly for a few minutes, and then we maybe take those questions as part of the discussion rather than me delivering pre-prepared answers. So I hope that all sounds good. So, what does the Senior Vice Principal do? Perhaps just to explain that a little bit. So my role is to line manage all of the heads of academic schools. So effectively, I'm the Chief Academic Officer of the university, sitting alongside Tracy Slaven, who is the University Secretary and Chief Operating Officer. So we work very closely with the Principal, myself to look after the academic half of the university, and Tracy the professional services side. So I oversee planning of the schools and also have a number of different portfolios as part of my role. One of them is around digital. One of them is around the people portfolio and also around the estates. So I also chair the University's Estates Committee as well. So those three areas. And then I guess through Aberdeen 2040, I've also taken on the lead role for sustainable as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move on. So I'm really happy to take questions across any aspect of what I do or any aspect of the university in general as we open things up. Just wanted to say a little bit about Aberdeen 2040. I really like the way we can pull it all together in one slide. If you don't know all the ins and outs of it, the website's fantastic that was put together last year. Some great videos on there just to give it a bit of sense of life and so on. But if we just look at what it's all about, about the one foundational purpose of the university, which is that we're open to all and dedicated to the pursuit of truth in the service of others. And that goes all the way back to 1495. We have two core activities at the university, education and research. We have 4 themes within Aberdeen 2040, inclusive, interdisciplinary, international and sustainable. And then we also set 5 interdisciplinary challenges, which are the areas where we think we've already got major strength and that where we focus over the next period, over the next 5, 10, up to 20 years, allow us to really make a difference in the world. And those are there. They're all set out there. And you'll recognise that we have those strengths across the university. Doesn't mean that other areas are not important, but these are the ones that we will seek to invest further in. We've now appointed 5 interim directors for these areas. We'll be appointing permanent directors to take forward the leadership of this work. And this is both for education as well as research. And finally, what we did was we made 20 commitments, 5 for each of the 4 themes. And those are all, again, set out. And I just wanted to talk about, I guess, 2 of the 4 themes today, because they're the ones that probably I'm most involved in, though I have a role across all of them. This is how the commitments look. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but these are the 5 commitments that we have in relation to inclusive. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud that as a university, our number one commitment, which is the first one of Aberdeen 2040, is about caring for the well-being, health and safety of our diverse community. That's never been more important than in the last year. And I think that the fact that Aberdeen 2040 has that as the number one thing right at the heart of what we're trying to do has stood us in really good stead as we've moved through the pandemic as a community together. There are other aspects of inclusive there, widening access, so ensuring that we are open to all students who can benefit from the study here around flexible entry routes and so forth. Ensuring our research is open and inclusive to national and international collaborations, including not just universities but other organisations. And then an area that's perhaps one that we might touch on a little bit more during this conversation is around equality, diversity, inclusion. So my role as well is to chair the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, which was set up in the last 18 months, didn't exist before I arrived at the university in February, March 2019, and really coordinates everything across this really important area. And I know it's an area that we've been having a lot of discussions involving student representatives as well. And finally, one that we haven't done much about in the last year, because we've had a pay freeze, is try to eliminate pay gaps, gender, but across all protected characteristics. And that's a really stretching thing for any organisation to do. So those are important areas that we're looking at in terms of inclusive. And just to give you a sense, we did get some questions in advance around sustainable. So what are we trying to do as a university together, whole community around sustainable? So the first thing is encouraging everyone to work and live sustainably. And also there's an element here about time, energy and resilience. And I think that's become really important for all of us, students and staff, thinking about workload pressures, how we live our lives, how we develop and make sure that we're able to not get completely swamped by everything that we all have to do and not be able to think about our sustainability as individuals, as people, as well as the sustainability of the planet. So I think what you can see is that throughout Aberdeen 2040, there's a really strong values-driven approach to what we want to do as a university community together. And I think that came through really strongly in all the consultation work that went on with both students and staff. And I'm really proud to work at a university that has this kind of emphasis on people, on values, and what we're trying to achieve culturally, as well as in terms of our education and research. There's a role for all of our students and staff to be leaders in protecting the environment. And I remember Cecilia making the point at Senate, where this used to say, educate all our students to be leaders in protecting the environment. It said, well, if it's good enough for students, it must be good enough for staff. So we took that feedback on board. And there's a lot of work, I think, for us to do in thinking through how we deliver that particular commitment. Clearly, we've got research in this area that is going to be really important. We've got the energy transition and the environment and biodiversity, interdisciplinary challenges. So we want to be major players in the world of research in this particular area around sustainability. Very important commitment around net zero carbon emissions. This was originally in the draft by 2040. And again, thanks to the student feedback, people were saying, that's too slow. Can we bring it to before 2040? And so we committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions before 2040. And I'll talk about some of the work in response to one of the questions that's come in that we're doing around that already. And finally, we need to be financially sustainable, of course. We need to be able to invest. We need to be able to protect our jobs, being able to invest in people, in buildings, in infrastructure, in digital systems, and so forth. So that's another important element of our sustainability. Okay, so that's Aberdeen 2014. Really happy to take questions on any aspect of that as we go through. I thought it might be helpful just to talk about these three areas in relation to campus planning as well. We'll talk about the government's announcement in a moment. I've got a slide in a moment which just summarises the government's position as Scotland comes out of lockdown over the coming months. And we maybe then want to discuss how that will look. We've obviously had a lot of questions around no detriment and what there's the new approach that we're adopting or proposing around protection from disadvantage. And I know you've got a discussion about that as well as a separate agenda item. So I'm sure we'll come on to that. I know there are a number of questions around that, and we'll come on to that in a moment. And then just to say that library access has been one of the key issues we've been discussing at the Campus Planning Group over the last week, 10 days. And I'm delighted to say that we'll be announcing the opening of the library at Forester Hill. I believe it's going to open tomorrow morning. So that's, I think, welcome, and that will increase the capacity we have across the two campuses and take, I hope, a little bit of pressure off the library on the old Aberdeen campus. Just finally, very quickly, say something about today's announcement. So this is what the government's publication says today. So this is lifted word for word. So when conditions allow, the government will progressively broaden the scope of those allowed to return, with priority continuing to be given to these particular groups. So pipelines in critical sectors, health and social care, and early learning and childcare. And then students whose attendance is time sensitive and critical to the successful conclusion of their studies, and which cannot be delivered remotely or postponed. I'm not going to discuss in detail what that might look like tonight. We've just discussed it as a senior team at the university, and we will be communicating to all staff and students, I would hope in the next 24 hours, around the implications of today's announcements from the government around that. But what we're seeing is that not before the 15th of March, but after that, potentially from the 15th of March, there'll be a phased return of a further small number of priority students for in-person learning. And then we're anticipating that it will be as late April before we move back to the levels where either in level 4, which is effectively a kind of local lockdown, level 3 that we were in from almost the end of November, early December, or level 2, which is what we were operating under when we had blended learning in the early part of most of the first half session. So we can see that what we want to see as a university is that this progressive normalisation of life across Scotland and for the university. It's going to take time. We understand that, and we're very grateful for the patience that everybody has shown throughout the pandemic in trying to move forward in a coordinated fashion in line with Scottish Government guidance. I think in the interest of time, I'll just stop there, perhaps stop sharing, and we can then move on to questions as well. So.
Brilliant, thanks. So yeah, has anyone got any questions? You just raise your hand and then I can...
I'm obviously conscious that there's a number of pre-submitted questions as well, so I don't know whether you want me to take those one at a time as well, but I don't want to not deal with those, but I know we're very happy to do that, but just let me know how you want to play it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe go with the pre-submitted questions first, and there'll be questions that go in the chat as well, and I'll read them out to you as well if you can't see them. Just because some people's mics don't work. So yeah, if there's
I think things fall into 3 or 4 different areas. Perhaps if we deal with the no detriment set of questions that came in first of all. So one of the questions was, what was wrong with the old no detriment policy? That was the one that Senate eventually did not adopt. And so reflecting on the discussion at Senate, that some of the things that were felt in the discussion not to be optimal about it was that it doesn't cover the whole of this session, this academic year. It was only going to be for the second half session. It didn't apply to all students on all campuses. And there was some discussion that it might have some consequences for some students that were not uniformly fair across all categories of students. So what we've done is put in place a proposal that I know you're going to be discussing, which I think addresses those areas of concern that senators had, and which is why they didn't support the no detriment policy in the form that it was. So if we say one of the second questions that was submitted, what are the difference between the old and the new policy? So the new policy will address the whole of the academic year. It will cover all students, and it will use an extended borderline so that more students are identified and considered at exam meetings than would normally be the case. And we're also introducing, we don't anticipate there'll be an increase in resits, but for any student that may have to have a resit, then we would also remove the requirement for any fee around that, so that isn't an issue. Another question was, how does it compare with other universities? So are we doing something different? Are we going a different route? And we've looked at this. Many universities are actually using a very similar approach to us now, and our revised approach. So using the adjusted processes that have been put in place for COVID and enhancing them, which is what we're trying to do as well. And the plan is there'll be a full discussion of this at Senate next week to get an academic view. It'll be very good to see where Senate's at then, including the views from the student representatives, who will obviously be guided by the discussions that you're all having. And then we'll go back for a formal endorsement at Senate of the final proposals on the 17th of March. A couple of other areas that I was asked about. One was a technical question about what are we doing about the newly introduced hotel quarantine for international arrivals. So if a student is coming in from overseas and they're from what's called a red list country, which means they need to go into the quarantine hotel, at the moment that's what has to happen. Universities across Scotland are still in discussion with the Scottish Government about whether we can use our own halls of residence as that quarantine location. Until such time as that happens, and we can't be guaranteed that will happen, students will need to go into the quarantine hotel, but we'll also ensure that they're able to seek support through the hardship funds, which we have, and the Scottish Government has given universities in Scotland quite a substantial chunk of money for student hardship. So while it's a considerable amount of money, we're very aware of that. We would much prefer students to be able to quarantine in the halls of residence. Until that's possible, then they will need to quarantine in the formal hotel set up for that purpose. And then there were a couple of questions about environment and two or three. What are we doing to make the university more sustainable? So the Sustainability Steering Group did not exist a year ago. We set it up following Aberdeen 2040. We've got good student representation on there. And that group is now working on a series of different areas. One is around what do we mean by net zero, because there are different definitions of that. So it's really important we understand what we're actually targeting and then start to develop a plan for that. So we've had a net zero working group that's been reporting in, understanding our definition of it, whether we're including only our own admissions or are we looking at so-called scope 3, which is things like our supply chain and so forth. And we want to take the maximum view, not a technical minimum view of what net zero means. We've developed some sustainable design guides that will guide the development of our campus and so forth. And so there's a lot already going on in that space. We've had another aspect was around fossil free. We've had lots of discussions with a group of student representatives, I think several of them on the call today, around moving to a position of withdrawing our investments from fossil fuels. And I think George said something about that last time he visited, and we're working really closely with that group of students. And the idea is to take a proposal to the senior team, our investment committee, and then the university court in the coming months to confirm that we will withdraw from any investment in fossil fuels. So that piece of work has been, I think, accelerated thanks to the really constructive feedback we've had from students on that important issue. There's probably one or two other questions, but I've spoken a lot, and I much prefer a kind of dialogue approach. So I'll probably pause there, and then we can pick up things as they come in.
Okay, yes, so we've had a question in the chat. It says, are there any documents for students to see blueprints or plans for how to achieve Aberdeen 2040, i.e. how will the University of Aberdeen work towards the, quote, highest standards of equality, diversity and inclusion, end quote, and how will it manifest in physical/visible terms on campus? It would be good to see measurable improvement to avoid using buzzwords with no active improvements.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So if I explain how we've been going about the implementation of Aberdeen 2040, clearly just after we launched it, the pandemic struck, and we spent a lot of time just firefighting, dealing with the situation. But what we decided this year is not to concentrate on all 20 commitments across the year. So we developed a 1-year plan instead of a 5-year plan, which is the original idea, that we would develop and involve obviously students in that discussion as well as to what we do over 5 years. So we've only focused on about 9 items this year within what we're calling the operational plan. And those are things that we've taken forward this year. We have, I would say, sent out, for example, I think we issued a communication to all staff and students around what we're doing around sustainable. What I would hope is that, I've discussed this with Jenny Fernandez, the Director of External Relations, is that we need to ensure that on a rolling basis, we've got a set of communications around what we're doing, what we're aiming to achieve, and how people can get involved in that work. Now that we're beginning to come out of the pandemic, although that's always a risky statement, given what we've experienced in the last few months, the plan is now to develop a 4-year 21 to 25 implementation plan. And that's what we'll be co-developing with staff and students across the university in the coming months, so that we can take a proposal to our Senate and then University Court over the summer and get that in place by September. There are a number of things, but I take that challenge from that questionnaire as to how we ensure that students are cited on what we're doing, and we get beyond the presentation of the strategy, which we launched last year, and explaining the milestones, starting to set targets out to 2025. That's something we need to do as well. So what targets are we setting around net zero to 25? And then how are we doing against them? And my view is you have to be transparent about what we're doing. It won't be a strategy that we all buy into if it's simply, stuck on the website or in a drawer. It has to be then explained. This is what we're trying to do. Is this what we all agree is worth doing? Will that work? So we have a series of metrics that we've agreed again at Senate and Court around the things we'll measure under the 20 commitments. And I think people should be aware of what they are. And I take the challenge that maybe we haven't communicated that as effectively as we could. So I'll take that away.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? That's just from the Jevon who asked that question. He says thanks. I think you can see that, can't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bro. So then we'll go to Anthony. He's got a question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. I was wondering, at the end of January, there was an incident at Hill Head where students were breaking COVID rules. I think there was a party and police were called, and as a result, the university said that there would then be harsher consequences for those breaking rules, including potentially facing disciplinary committee or expulsion from halls, or potentially even expulsion from university. And I was wondering, firstly, has that happened? Have people been taken to the disciplinary committee? And if so, what consequences have been faced? And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, what would you say the university is doing and can do to support students in halls who are breaking rules because of loneliness or lack of support and resources and so on?
Okay, 2 different questions there. Thanks very much. So my understanding, although I'm not part of that process, is that there are some cases that will be going to a disciplinary. I don't have details either on the numbers of those or what process they're in. It's the vice principals who have to chair those panels when students go through that process, and I'm not involved in that. So, but I do know that the vice principals were asked to be ready to act because there were 1 or 2 cases coming through. So I don't know the scale of that, and so I can't comment further on that. but that is happening. The second thing is, what support can we provide to students? I think the university has worked pretty hard to try to support students throughout the pandemic. We did have a number of students, for example, self-isolating in the autumn, and I think there was a lot of controversy about the ways in which universities were supporting students, and we all know about the Manchester scenario and the building of the fence and so forth. I think I'm quite proud of what we achieved in the support for students. We gave out really good boxes of food, which haven't always been good in other universities and weren't always good in the schools as well. That we saw that controversy as well. So we had a huge number of calls made. I think we put on the website every week. We publish the support that we've provided, so you can read the history of the number of boxes that we've provided, the number of support calls, and so forth. So it's not been easy for anybody. It's really difficult for students self-isolating. It's difficult for everybody living in lockdown. And I don't know how you found it, but this second period after Christmas has been a hugely crushing experience compared with the first lockdown. There was almost a sense of, a sense of togetherness in the first lockdown. That we all marvelled at the fact that our roads were completely empty, and there was something, historic, and somehow it brought out the best in everybody at that point. And I think this second lockdown, for all of us psychologically, I'm homeschooling my kids. I pick up from the staff survey and so on. It's a tough time. It's a tough time for staff, and it's a tough time for students. So I'm delighted that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I don't underestimate the challenges of people living in halls. We shouldn't have too many in halls because students should only return, as you know, under very specific circumstances. But there are some there. But there's a civic duty that we all have, I think, to play our part. And for the most part, students have been working really hard, within the rules. Those are not our rules. Those are Scottish Government nationwide rules that are there to protect us all. And we just have to encourage everybody to follow them, I think. The support mechanisms are there. We communicated a lot of stuff to students. I think Ruth, when she talked as well, talked about the support that's available for students. And we're always willing to hear of further things we can do to try to support people.
Thanks for that. If I can just quickly follow up with one more question. You were talking about the support that was provided by the university to students locked down in halls last semester. You're saying you were quite proud of it. Are you proud of the fact that the university was originally going to charge students for the food boxes provided?
I don't recall that. I'm proud of the response that we made. We supported students appropriately, and I think we've been fleet of foot throughout the pandemic to try to respond to feedback as well. So, I wasn't aware that we were planning to charge, but we certainly didn't charge. And I think we got really good feedback from both parents and students as to the support that we provided.
Okay, thanks. Well, I can send you the Gaudi article link, but thanks for the answer anyway.
I probably missed that one. I do see some Gaudi articles, but maybe not everyone.
We're self-promoting, Anthony. We'll go to Andre next.
Hi, so Andre, the Vice President for Education. So I have two questions. So with the current announcement and the commitment that the university will be, providing a 2-week window before we call for any return to campus, is there going to be any possible return to campus for undergraduate students, or would that just be for the PGTs? And a second question, unrelated to that one, is there a backup plan that, SMT would go through if the no detriment policy, comprehensive measures on assessment due to COVID-19, if they do not pass through the Senate, what would happen afterwards?
Okay, let's take the first question. I think that we will make an announcement tomorrow, and I think it'd probably be inappropriate for me to prejudge that. I think we can all see that this is a very gradual process of opening up. There may be some groups of undergraduate students where that definition that I put up earlier on would apply. I think one of the areas that we feel that there would be real value in being able to do that kind of offering is around our field work. So we have a group of students who have not had the opportunity to do field work, and it's such a key component of what they do in both geosciences and in the School of Biological Sciences. So I know Ruth has been working with those schools to see whether that might be one of the first things that we could open up in a flexible way. So I'm not going to prejudge the announcement, Andre. I think we all know that the opportunities are still very, very prescribed at the moment. That doesn't mean that students may not wish to return to Aberdeen to be in residence at some point during this session, because we've already seen quite a number of students who've come back for personal reasons, because of the conditions in which they would normally be trying to study in their home environment, if we can call it that. So I'm anticipating that there will be a number of students who will want to return to Aberdeen who have not been able to do so, even if there is not on-campus teaching for them under the current restrictions for a considerable period of time. As you're right to make a distinction as well between undergraduate and postgraduate, the Scottish Government has been very clear that PGT is different, and we will need to be very careful in how we communicate, not to suggest that there's an exact parallel there. We also have a number of postgraduate taught students who started in January, several hundred. So we now are a university that admits quite a sizable proportion of our taught postgraduate cohort in January. And so, that group will then be looking to move to an on-campus experience as soon as we're able to provide it under the regulations. So there'll be more tomorrow, or certainly by the day after at the latest, but I would hope tomorrow. But it will take time. Now, I've forgotten your second question. What would happen if no detriment isn't passed by Senate? I think we've put in place a process which will allow Senate to reach a collective view and a settled view. I think we'll have a good discussion next Wednesday. And the whole point of that is to try to build a consensus at Senate and to ensure that by the time we come to a vote on the 17th of March, we have an agreed position that we're all bought into and we're all supporting. So I don't envisage a situation in which we would not have a policy in place by the 17th of March. Let's hope that that's an accurate prediction, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to that position. I think the Vice Principal Education, Ruth Taylor, has done a huge amount of work working with yourselves, working with examinations officers, working with the Blitvig leads in the schools, working with the elected senators, and so I'm hopeful that we will reach a consensus.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. Then the next question is from Mustafa.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is regarding the protection from disadvantage policy that is hopefully to be implemented. Specifically, the 3 principles upon which a borderline student may be upgraded to the next grade classification. And I focus on the 3 principles, on specifically the exit velocity principle, in which it states, has a student improved their overall grades in the higher honors year, that would be a factor that would encourage the committee to take a positive decision on the matter. My question is, would it perhaps be wiser to have the opposite? Because in all cases of consideration, the higher year is the year that which would be affected. And thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I necessarily accept the premise there, because there was considerable disruption to students last year, and that's where we did have a no detriment policy in place for the second half session of last year. So I'm not sure I follow the logic that it will only be students in their higher year who are affected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Perhaps it would have been better for me to say from now on as opposed to last year, because I assume, specifically the years graduating in 2021 and maybe 2022, but let's focus on 2021. The higher year would, in 2021 graduation case, be this year, the higher undergraduate year. And I was wondering if this is the year that is to be affected by the general circumstances, and this is the year that's given weight by the exit velocity principle. Wouldn't it be a little bit unfair or counterintuitive?
Yeah. So exit velocity is something that is used commonly across the sector. It's in our existing procedures, and I think in some cases it will be of benefit to students. One of the interesting factors that heads of school are talking to me about is that actually students are doing really pretty well in their assessments. And certainly what they were seeing last semester means that students were, on average, not everybody, of course, and that's why individual circumstances matter, and why everybody's individual circumstances means that they're being affected needs to flag that. But on the whole, I think students are performing pretty strongly. So we would not necessarily anticipate a falling off of grades very starkly across the whole of this final year that students are in. So, yeah, I think we need to see the whole package rather than focusing on one particular aspect of the ways in which students will be classified. And I'm sure you're looking at that, and I would take that back to Ruth and have a discussion with her about it. Okay, and a very quick final follow-up question. The mitigating circumstance principle is really, really good, but I was wondering on when the examination, the committee would consider such students that the students would be informed that this was happening and that they'd have a chance to communicate these mitigating circumstances, or if it was the course coordinators that are going to be communicated, just how they're going to be considered. Yeah, no, so students are, there's a process by which any student, and there is every year, of course, because things happen in everybody's life, or potentially in anybody's life at any point in their studies, COVID or no COVID. So that we have an established process of people raising the circumstances which are affecting their study, and those will then be considered. The way that it normally works is those are considered ahead of the exam board, because what you don't want to happen is people's individual circumstances being discussed by a large number of people. So the principle is that they should be discussed by the smallest number of people required to take a decision about what adjustments then need to be made, so that people's personal circumstances are kept as private as possible and as confidentially as possible. Those are then a recommendation is then made to the exam board as to how that should be then factored into the consideration of their grade profile, etc. So that's how it works.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying. That's it for me.
Okay, just that we've got 3 more questions. If you're happy to take them, just as.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And just a reminder to everyone that's asking questions, if you could state your name and committee when you ask the questions, just easier for minute taking. So we'll go to, is it Victoria next? Maria, Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Orr for Sports Committee. I would like to ask, what do you think about the ASB passport?
So I know there have been discussions about this. Sport is not something that I cover, so I'm not as au fait with the detail of this, but I know there's been some discussion around this, and I know that it's been a little bit controversial, but I don't really have, the honest answer is I don't have a strong opinion about it because I'm not across that piece of detail. But I'm very happy for you to communicate outside this meeting, and I can pick up any discussion that there is to be had around that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. And then we go to Harnum.
Hello, Harnum, Blue Secretary for the Sports Committee. My question is, I just wanted to know what the university planned to replace fossil fuel with, and how long do you think that will take?
Okay, so we're working with the region, and the Aberdeen City region is certainly looking at hydrogen as a key component of the transition from fossil fuels. You're probably aware of the developments in the hydrogen sector, and Aberdeen has led the way in some of the uses of hydrogen. So I imagine from all of the research I'm reading, and I sit on the board of OGTC as well, which is one of the agencies set up to help the North Sea industry transition to an energy neutral future, or carbon neutral future. That I suspect that there will be a process whereby, for example, domestic heating and things like our boiler systems are my guess is we're going to all move to a hydrogen basis for much of our heating needs, for example. So that will be a key area. One of the things I've learned is that the transition to net zero is massively complicated, even to understand what you mean by it, first of all. So I don't claim to have all the answers or to be an expert in this, but what I do know is that we are looking at it systematically, both individually as a university, but I think we have to do it in partnership with the city. So I meet regularly with people at the city council, as does George, and one of the things we did discuss last week was the city's approach to this. So the city's doing a lot of work on its plans for the transformation of the Aberdeen city region. So they'll have a roadmap that they're developing. There was a workshop last week, which I didn't go to, but Liz Rattray, our head of research and innovation, attended. So these debates are live in the region and the city at the moment. And as we see that shaping up, we will be in partnership with the city on how we move, particularly our heating systems, to a net zero solution.
Hi, thanks for that. I also got a second question, if you don't mind. It was more in relation to the sports strategy and why from the university it never really materialised. Because I know from the sports, as I sit on the sports committee, we did try our best, but we're just wondering what the university's perspective on that is.
Yeah, so there was a group that Alan Spate led around the sports strategy, which did produce a report, which we considered at the senior management team. And we've agreed that David Beattie, who's our director of finance, will lead the next phase of that work. So that's been paused a little bit because of just the sheer weight of stuff to do at the moment. But that's the plan, that David will then lead forward taking forward the discussions that emerged out of that piece of work. It's true that we've been a bit slower to have an overall strategy and an overall sense of leadership of sport. We've got great facilities, but I'm well aware of the complexity of the discussions that have gone on, and I'm also cited on some of the issues around the estates dimensions, because that does fall to me under the estates committee. So there are some discussions to be had about what we're doing with the playing fields and the pavilion and the development of the facilities. So it's in train. It's been slower than I would have liked and that the university would have liked, and certainly slower, I'm sure, than that you would have liked. But we have done some work. We've come to some conclusions. We now need to take forward the next stages. And as I say, David Beattie will lead that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then we go to Connor.
Hi there, Connor McCausland for Centre Stage Fair Society and the Society's Union Committee. Just a quick question. You kind of spoke a little bit earlier about the hopes that the version of the new no detriment policy that is being brought to Senate will hopefully go ahead, and we're really hopeful that a consensus will occur for that. But as I think Andre or someone asked, if it weren't to go ahead, which obviously no one wants to happen, but if it weren't, would there ever be an opportunity to implements the emergency motions to bring it forward. Because I know that the original no detriment policy from March last year was, it didn't go through Senate. It was an state of emergency. And I don't know if that's because of that was the first lockdown or not, but I feel like that there is a case potentially for it to be used again should this not go ahead. Thank you very much.
Yes, we as a senior team are absolutely committed to getting a fair system in place for our classification. So no detriment was not supported for a variety of reasons that I outlined, and some of those reasons I think were strongly argued, and Senate didn't vote willfully not to have a no detriment policy. There were some really strong arguments made that ultimately carried a majority, and so what we immediately did was set about ensuring that we had an alternative in place, and I think that alternative is a strong one. I think I personally am of the view that it will command, and it's not finalised, of course, it's still there for discussion. There'll be a Senate next week to discuss it, but I think we as a community need to reach a settled view together, and that's why we've taken the time as well. We could have said, well, okay, we need to go back to Senate quickly. We have to reach a settled consensus as a community of students, staff, senators, and that's what this process has been all about. And I think the time that we're taking and the care that Ruth has exercised in making sure that there's been really strong consultation will get us to that point. If you're posing a theoretical, if we were to be in a situation where it wasn't passed, then we would have to have another think and another look at what we do together to reach that settled consensus. But I would be very, very surprised if we don't reach that position through the process that's been set up.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay, thanks. I don't think there's any more questions. Anyone want to put their hand up? No. Nope. I don't know if there's another one from Victoria again. Victoria, is that a legacy hand or?
Yes. Hi again, Victoria for the Sports Committee. Is a question related about what you answered to Harnam before, and is it that if that does mean that sports is seen as an income generator?
I don't think I said anything in relation to sport that implied it was an income generator. I think the fact that David Beattie has been asked to chair it is because he has a long history of involvement in the sports area. He was seconded when ASV was constructed, so he was part of the group that delivered those excellent facilities. What George does is look to the senior team, look at who's got what on, and then assign someone to lead in a particular area. And he felt that he wanted David to lead this piece of work. And I think David's well qualified to do so. It is not a signal that it's all about income generation. If that's the thing that you're picking up, is that what I'm picking up, that you were worried because of that particular, the fact that he's the director of finance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah, no, he's got a personal interest in sport. You may have seen that his daughter represents Scotland in trampolining, wins world silver medals and so on. So, he's as committed as anyone to ensuring we have a fantastic set of sports facilities and a great partnership with the student union and the sports union around how we move forward on the sports side.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we won't keep you for any longer, unless there's anything else you'd like to say, or.
No, it's been really good. I really enjoy this kind of forum. Very happy to come back at any point. And if there are any things that anyone wants to forward to me afterwards, or if you want to gather up any things, I'm very happy to, as always, to follow up with anybody around anything and to address any further questions you might have.
Okay, brilliant. And thank you very much for coming and joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay. Cool. Perfect. Thanks everyone for taking part in that. So I believe we left off. There was a question from Daniel to Radine. If Daniel can remember that question, which I'm sure he can because his hand's up straight away. So we'll go back to Radine's accountability session. And Daniel.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring the attention of the council to a certain point that me and the Vice President of the Community spoke on earlier, which might take a slight while to kind of explain, but I'll get to it. It was on the subject of the committee's handbook, which me and the communities and the Vice President of the Communities have spoken about. I'm not sure how many members of the council, especially the standing committees, know about the booklet, but basically it's a handbook that contains a section of information and rules about how committees should operate. And within that, there's certain rules, but for instance, it has rules on how votes should be had and stuff like that, and even contains sections of information that I don't think actually pertain to the committees, like no confidence votes in the chairs of the standing committees, which isn't anything that I've ever heard of being done, for that matter. So I was wondering, I'd spoken to the Vice President for Communities about the matter beforehand because it had been used essentially to invalidate a meeting of the Society's Union Committee. And we'd asked where the committee where the handbook had come from. And after a discussion, it turned out that it had been brought about by the staff at AUSA. And then we had a small discussion relating to how we could possibly make it so that this booklet was made to be democratic and that the members of the standing committee can actually vote on this booklet and can actually, have say in what it actually says. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the council and also ask the VP for Communities if there'd been any sort of progress on that.
Yeah, I can come in. We did have a discussion on this, and I think what I did say in the discussion was that this was an operational handbook, so I don't think it's necessarily relevant for Student Council to be voting on something that's operational. The reason why that meeting, as you put it, was invalidated wasn't just because it was an arbitrary rule. It was because for the interest of meetings being transparent for every student to participate in, it's best that it is advertised, and that meeting in question wasn't advertised to students, and committee meetings do need to be advertised. Now, the actual the guidelines in the handbook are not things that are necessarily democratically elected on, because it's a guide in order to, it's a guide of best practice, essentially. So it's to ensure that staff are able to run efficiently, and it's also to ensure that committees run efficiently. So essentially it's a way to ensure that there's good governance. So again, if this is something that we've obviously been working on together, so I am more than happy to continue working with you on this to fix any of the issues that may arise because of the handbook. But I don't think this is something that necessarily needs to be discussed at Student Council.
Daniel, you want to come back on that, or is that
continue, please? Well, thanks for that explanation. I just wanted to bring this more to the attention of the other members of the standing committees as it pertains to them. With that said, I understand, and I don't object to the rules as they stand in there. I mean, many of them are okay. Some of the information obviously doesn't actually pertain to the standing committees that's written in there. But I think if there is going to be a rule book for the standing committees, it seems that we should, or the members of the standing committee should have some method of having input on those votes rather than them being brought about by the staff or any other method. And it seems that the best place to do that would probably be at council, given that something like 75% of the members at council are members of the standing committees. It's just that I would like to see this document made to be democratic, and that the standing committees can set their own rules on these type of things rather than them just brought about. Yeah,
I'm happy to come back on that. So So the actual guide is something that is presented to every student councillor during the training. So we do actually ask for feedback from student councillors during the training on if they want to change anything or if they see issues with any of the parts of the handbook. Additionally, like these rules within the guide are based on student council procedures, so they're lifted. So they're processes that are lifted from the bylaws, and so it's the procedure that we've been going through has been agreed upon by the sabbatical team. So it's while it's not directly democratic, it is something that we do consider when creating it, and councillors have an opportunity to provide feedback on that because it is available to all councillors when it's provided during the training.
Okay. Is that all for you, Daniel, as well?
Could I, like I was saying, I would probably say that while I understand that there is some level of feedback in the way of we can directly, say during training we can actually specify what it is that we feel is good or isn't good about this document. I think that it might be beneficial that if there are to be rules for the standing committees that are out with their they're sort of out with their own policies, as Bylaw 5 allows for the standing committees to create their own rules on things like their own votes, whereas this document actually sets what the rules are for their voting. So if that's to be the case, then I feel that there should be at least some democratic input, more so than just us actually saying what it is that we want, like some recorded voting or something along those lines. Because there's a question of where this document gets its validity from, because it seems to be indirect. It seems to directly contravene what Bylaw 5 says regarding us being able to implement our own policy. Sorry, I don't mean to drag this out any more than it should. I just thought that this should come to the attention of the councillors and that we should have a discussion about the best way forward with this. I'll leave it there for now, actually, I think.
I'll come back to Radine.
Yeah, I think just to put it quite frankly, I think if there was a big issue with a lot of the rules within the guidebook, that more people would have come forward at the time of the training when we asked for feedback on it. I also would say that we any councillor can come in, and I don't necessarily agree that there needs to be a rule, like there needs to be a vote on the rules, because I think that takes up too much time in student council for voting on each rule. All the rules within the guidebook don't go against what the bylaws already say. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks both of you for that. If Ellie is there, we can go to a vote unless anyone has any more questions for Radine. No. Okay, so Ellie is excellent. So you can vote. We're just voting on the sabbatical accountability assessment. So it's for, against, or an abstention. There is the card that's just come up on your screen, and also a link in the chat for if the card doesn't work for you for whatever reason. Okay, do we have the results for that, Ellie? Thank you. Okay, so that's 40 votes for, 8 against, and 42 votes for, 42 votes for, 8 against, and 13 abstentions. So that passes as well. Okay, and then we move on to the, thanks Ellie, we move on to the committees and fora update. Does any committee or fora wish to update us? You can raise your hand now if you do, whilst Iris. No, okay. We can then vote on the committee and fora updates as well. If we have the
vote on this one.
Oh, no vote on that one. Of course. Okay. Then we move on to any other council business, which is quite packed this evening. So we come to an emergency motion. I'll just go over what motions are again for those of us that may not know. The following motions are proposed. Well, the following motion, emergency motion, is proposed to become AUSA policy. If passed, they will become policy, and policy implementation is overseen by the sabbatical officers. Policy provide the framework within which AUSA and its elected sabbatical officers operate. These require a simple majority to pass, so if more than 50% of the votes, excluding abstentions, are in favour, they pass. We have one motion, emergency motion this evening on the no detriment policy, but before we do that, we have to have a vote on whether we can allow the leader of the campaign for a no detriment policy to speak in council, as she is not a member of a council. So I believe that vote can go up there. I hope everything's okay, and thoughts to your family, Benjamin. Obviously it's okay for you as well. Okay, so that's the vote there. To allow Natalie to speak on the no detriment policy, as she is not a member of council. So we'll just take a couple of minutes, or a minute or so, to wait for that to come in. Okay, have you got the results for that, Ellie, please? Thank you. So that's 44 for, against, and 3 abstentions. So we have allowed Natalie to speak on the no detriment policy. Emergency motion. Natalie, are you there? Somewhere. Yes. Hello, you have permission to speak, and you've got 2 minutes to introduce your motion once we get round to unmuting you, which will take David only a couple of seconds, unless he's gone to the toilet, which he may have. Even though I'm the chair, I don't have the power to unmute you. That has been delegated down the chain. So,
that's me.
Brilliant. Off you go.
Perfect. So, as I say, I'm Natalie. I'm the committee chair for the Student for No Detriment Policy campaign. Throughout the last year, we've been living, studying and working under conditions that have never been seen in our lifetime before. The COVID-19 pandemic has meant that we have been and are continuing to live through a collective worldwide trauma, and yet we as students are expected to perform as if this doesn't affect our studies. On top of that, on the 3rd of February, as we know, the University Senate voted against implementing a no detriment policy, 40 to 56, that would have provided much needed support to students. The support that the schools have provided to students has been varied and unequal. Some schools have been fantastic and have relaxed their procedures mitigating circumstances, allowed for extensions and considered the impact that the pandemic is having on their students as well as their staff. These schools, however, are in the minority, and it's unreasonable that some schools are being less supportive than others. It shouldn't be a lucky dip whether or not a student receives support based on the school that they're studying in. Additionally, final year's honours students have now faced 3 semesters, or the majority of their honours years, working under COVID restrictions. This is bound to have an impact on the degree outcome that they achieve, and while this was taken into consideration for last year's graduates, the same cannot be said for those graduating this year. There's been disruption to placements, lab time has been almost non-existent for many students, and many project-based dissertations have been moved entirely online. This is not the university experience that students signed up for, and it's not what many have paid thousands of pounds for. We also must consider the students that have been most severely impacted by the pandemic. Disabled students have had their access to provisions such as note takers limited or made entirely unavailable. They've been unable to fully participate in online tutorials and have struggled to follow recorded lectures due to poor subtitling. Black and ethnic minority students have been more severely impacted by job losses and financial insecurity and have experienced worse hospital care when they've had to be admitted. LGBTQ+ students are stuck living in unsafe home environments or in countries where they're unable to be themselves. Our trans students have waitlists of up to 40 months now to access healthcare and have seen rising rates of transphobia across the country. International students are living in time zones that mean that they have to attend mandatory tutorials at midnight or later or risk failing, or on the opposite side have been stuck in Aberdeen and have been unable to return home to see their families in over a year for fear that they may not get back to the university. Our mature students have had to contend with childcare responsibilities, homeschooling and work on top of their studies, and students who have suffered from COVID-19 themselves or had to take care of family members, and there are students who have also lost their family members. These are the students that are most at risk, and these are the students that could most benefit from a no detriment policy. Over the last few weeks, the student body has rallied together. There's been an outcry across social media, a petition that's garnered over 2,000 signatures in a single week, and the Student for No Detriment Policy campaign was established. From there, we have gained support from our National Union of Students, the local and national press, and politicians across the political spectrum. Our campaign is echoing the sentiments of students across Scotland, and it is up to the university to listen. We need a no detriment policy that will support students during their studies and provide mitigation against the detrimental impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on all aspects of students' lives. We also need a no detriment policy that will bolster what the university already has in place, and we need a no detriment policy that will provide fair and equal access to support for students across all schools and courses, undergraduate and top postgraduate alike. We all need care and consideration during these times. The pandemic has severely impacted all of us, and we definitively need the university's support. So I therefore urge you to voice your support for a comprehensive no detriment policy and to support AUSA in continuing to lobby the university for this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Has anyone got any questions, first of all, for Natalie? Anyone at all? And I do mean questions, not questions disguised as statements. Nope. Easy. Does anyone wish to speak against this? Okay, we have got a question. So forget I just said what I said. Edward asks, are you talking about the new one or the old policy?
I am talking about the new policy. The motion was submitted to council before this policy was announced. However, on the back of the new policy, we would of course be discussing that one.
Okay, any more questions? Nope. Okay, does anyone wish to speak against this emergency motion? You can raise your hand. No. Okay. Well, I guess we can move to a vote then if a councillor was to suggest that and then someone was to second it. I believe we could move to a vote. Well, Harnham. Yeah. Are you just proposing and seconding, Daniel? Yeah.
Can we move to a vote, please?
Yeah, and I will take Daniel's hand as being up seconding it. Perfect. Thank you. Brilliant. So easy. Let's pop the vote in the Thanks, Andre. That's noted. So, like I said before, if the card doesn't work, don't fret. There is a link in the chat for you to vote there. It all links together, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to vote. Just waiting on a few more responses to come in, and then we'll be able to call this. And if we could pop up the old results, please, Ellie. Okay, so the emergency motion on the no detriment policy passes with 40 votes for, 7 against, and 7 abstentions as well. So there we go, that passes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Natalie.
Cool. Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, then we move on to a discussion on the protection from disadvantage policy. You'll find that on page 25, and I go to Andre.
Thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen. It says it's loading. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna give sort of a background into the procedures around the policy that I think people should understand before discussing the policy. But what I want to do today is to have a discussion and then have a vote on, whether we can agree to the current principles. And if there are any comments, I will take them on board and feed them into this discussion with Senate. So the paper was produced on Tuesday. We've since had a few discussions, so there have been already some agreed changes that would not be reflected in a document that you had before you. So I will be hopefully having another discussion later on that will likely be on the 8th of March, just to have a confirmation with council. So we'll get to that later. So what are we here to discuss today? So we're here to discuss the revised version of the no detriment policy. So it has a new name as well. I want to get all of the areas that councillors think we might improve within that policy and just discuss the general ideas of the policy, particularly in 4.10 and approval of the current strategy to help students. So before I get to the policy itself, I thought it would be important for people to know how degrees are actually calculated. So currently you will have your grades and somebody will add them up all together and it will calculate your GPA. All of your grades before they're taken into degree classification are taken as a number up to 2 decimal points, and the average ends up being a number to 2 decimal points. Once you have that number, you will then be classified by an examining officer, and if your classification is in one of the ones that isn't borderline, then you simply get classified. It's quite a straightforward process. It gets more tricky if you do fall within the borderline range. So if you do fall into that borderline range, then
I'm not sure if you know, but your PowerPoint's not moving. I don't know if you've gone to the next slide, but it's not changing on our screen.
Has it? Okay.
Oh, apparently Ellie has control of it for somehow. But there we are.
Okay, I got it now. Never mind. So anyway, this is the table that I was speaking about. So if you fall into, let's say, first class degree or 2-1 or 2-2 or third, it's quite straightforward. So if you fall into that smaller range, which is just in between, the examining board meets and they have a look at all of your grades and everything on your transcript and see whether you're eligible for an upgrade. So the current criteria is grade profile. So that means whether distribution of your grades is within, the different degree outcomes. So let's say that you're on a borderline of 2-1 in first. If you have majority of your grades to be A's, then, they could upgrade you based on your grade profile, because it suggests that there was a single dip in one of your grades. So similarly, you have exit velocity, which means that if you improve over the course of your studies, so coming from third to fourth year or from fourth to fifth year, and if there's a seen improvement, then they can upgrade you on that basis. And the third basis is a mitigating circumstance. So what happens in our process is, if you claim a mitigating circumstance or extenuating circumstance or a good cause, then it will get approved by a school at an earlier stage. And if it doesn't result in any change to the degree of the particular assessment, then it's noted, and that mitigating circumstance is then sent on to the examining board, so they will automatically consider it. And if the impact was big enough, then they will upgrade you on your degree if you find yourself in a borderline. So this policy, so I should probably mention, so first class degree here is from 18.00 and above, and 2-1 is 3 points below, and the borderline range is half a GPA. So this revised policy, mostly what it does, it changes the degree classification and how it's done. So basically, it extends the borderline range to a full GPA, technically 0.99, and the borderline gets moved to 17.01 as compared to the current one, 17.50. That means that students who find themselves lower on average will still be considered by an examining board, and they will have a discussion on whether there has been an impact of the coronavirus or whether they need additional information to make a decision. In terms of the current borderline, anybody in, let's say, 17.5 and above would automatically get upgraded. So those cases would not be heard by examining boards. They would be automatically upgraded. So that's a cohort of students that would also be automatically benefiting. So it does some other things on top of the classification. So it provides additional help for students who have failed or were unable to undertake larger pieces of assessment, so up to 30%, as long as they meet learning outcomes and as long as it was a good cause that they weren't able to undertake the assessment. So currently it's up to 25, so it's getting bumped up by slightly more, because a lot of the assessment when analysis was done was actually 30%. So that's the reason behind it. On top of all of that, there will be a uniform template for all examiners' meetings, so that all of the decisions are recorded in the exact same way. We'll need to see what facts were used to come to the decision that the examining board has. And it ensures that there is a consistency across the university, so that if there's two people in the same situation, they wouldn't be treated differently by two different schools. And worst comes to worst, if a student wants to appeal that decision, having this template makes it quite a straightforward process. So there's something that we still want on top of what's already there. So if you've read the policy, it's a little bit confusing to most about what the general COVID impact means. So general COVID impact is the basis with which the policy looks at a student, so they don't need to raise any mitigating circumstance to have that considered. And that's the form that they've used to sort of implement all of the changes in 4.10 and 4.17. So, for example, the general COVID impact resulted in the extended borderline and such. So for students who do not feel comfortable with raising stuff, they can go with that. And there's still the flexibility that if they believe what they're experiencing goes beyond the general COVID impact, then they can raise it as a mitigating circumstance or a good cause or whatever is appropriate. So the exam results deadlines, it's mentioned somewhere in a document that due to these changes, we would need to extend exam return date by a week, which would have a knock-off graduation on effect on graduations. So these changes clearly need to be communicated to students because last term they were not so well communicated. We want to have additional appeal guidance so that no students slip through the cracks. So that means if somebody would, by some situation, fall out with the borderline, that they would have a process that they can trigger and have their case reviewed and have the potential for an upgrade if there's conditions for having that. We also are calling for an additional support for students with resets. So in a policy, it says that they will now be all three, but we would want to see an increasing sort of capping. So currently it's at D3s. So we've had discussions yesterday. So the first 3 points were pretty much agreed to by the sub-Senate committees. The fourth one was currently viewed very negatively. So that is where we are. And I wanted to just highlight, what other universities in Scotland do, at least the ones that have already published their no detriment procedures in one way or another. So in terms of the assessment methods and module moderation and application of mitigating circumstance, we're roughly at the same level as any other institution. We moved to mostly alternative assessment, and we've tried to not have any in-person exams or exams of any sort unless it's absolutely necessary by degree accrediting bodies. So we try to change it in a way that it's more manageable in a current situation. And this semester we also worked on decreasing the workload because that has been quite high on students last term. So hopefully that will be better this term. In terms of student progression, there is different approaches to that. So we're keeping our current approach. That means you will be allowed to progress if you have up to 30 credits that you have failed, so that you can undertake it in a different year. Some universities have gone with 20, some with 40, some with 60, but we arrived at 30 because it was felt that if we allow students to take more credits than that, then it would be setting them up to fail because they would have too much workload in the following year. So we have a little bit below average flexibility around extensions within this policy. So some universities have adopted more flexible approaches to it and more automatic approaches. So ours will still be managed on a school level. So they're encouraged to give students up to a week of extension wherever's needed. And if there's a real need for having longer extensions, then they should be provided. And our approach mostly works on the basis of changes to the degree classification. So as far as I could find, there was no other Scottish institution that did something similar in terms of how do we recalculate degrees in a different way. So reading their policies, longer extensions and all of that, they felt that has such an impact on students that they don't really need to think about a different way of calculating degrees. Two things that I should have mentioned: this policy applies to the entire academic year, and it also applies to all students except dentistry, which means Qatar students as well. So I would first want to take questions if there are some concerns around what is in the policy before we move to a discussion.
Okay, I believe there's a question from Javier. Javier?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Javier, the Education Officer Vice Chair. I wanted to ask two questions. First of all, regarding the support for receipt students, what exactly does the policy say so far? Does it say that we want to raise the cap for receipts, or that we want to remove the cap for receipts? And the other question is, what options or what procedures would we have to follow to include dentistry students in this policy? Thank you.
So I'll take the second question first because it's easier. So dentist students, they've been in quite a difficult situation, even more so than everybody else the entire year. So because of that, they had much more severe impact on their education. So they're getting their special procedures in place. So that's why this wouldn't be appropriate for them. So it's sort of a different question. So that's why they're excluded. Not because they don't deserve this kind of policy, but because we need to do something very specific. In regards to the first question, currently it doesn't say anything because the university didn't want essentially to move anything around the reset. So it's sort of what we want as AUSA currently, and we've discussed it with Natalie to sort of give them a little bit of a boost if we can. But as I said on yesterday's discussion, they were very much against it because of all sorts of reasons. But I would still want to bring it up for a discussion later because they believe at the moment, I think, that the degree classification, the extended borderline and all these kind of things should take care of the reset issue at the moment. So that's the university stance, not mine.
Okay, brilliant. Alana?
Yeah, hi. It kind of neatly follows up from that last question. Do you think that you will manage to get a cap on resets at C1, or do you think there might be more chance of getting it at, say, C3? And for the minutes, that's Alana, Chair of RAG.
So it was discussed for both values. They weren't positive about either at the moment. So we'll just have to see whether, senators are more inclined to agree to that proposition. So it was discussion with directors of teaching and learning and, quality assurance representatives from each school. So none of them were in support of it because they were quite worried about both the administrative impact that it would have, because it could potentially delay a lot of university processes if we went to do that. And they've had worries about how it would be managed, and they thought that we currently don't have resources to support such a process. So I'm not sure, but we're still continuing those discussions.
Okay, thanks. Beatrix?
Hi, Vice Chair for the Welfare Committee. I was wondering if there would be a way for students to submit retroactive mitigating circumstances for appeals, and particularly for the last semester.
So if you still want to raise something within last semester, then I would encourage you to do it ASAP. You always have the opportunity to raise those issues if it comes to the end of your program. So, if you're wanting to appeal the decision by the exam board, you're always more than welcome to do that. It will be a question of what kind of impact does it have, because they look at retroactive mitigation quite carefully. So they need to have a look at specific time windows after that period and the impact it had in all of your classes rather than in the particular one that somebody would want to raise it for. So short answer is yes, but you need to be really careful with how you do that, because it might have an impact on courses that you perhaps would not want it to have an impact on if they were assessed at the same time.
Okay, thanks. Any final questions? Nope. Okay. We're going to a vote, I believe, for this, but not a vote to actually do anything, just to gauge opinion. Is that right, Andre?
Yeah, but I think we could still have a discussion on before we do that.
Yeah.
For like 5 minutes, maybe, around whether students think, it can be improved in some areas. So we clearly discussed the research issues, and, I highlighted some of the general COVID impact. There has been some feedback yesterday from Qatar committee around 4.2.9. So I've spoken to Ruth, so she's willing to change the wording on that. But, any comments like that would be very welcome, and I'll take them on to discussions with the Senate if councillors want to raise anything at this point.
Okay, just pop up your hand if there's anything you want to discuss. Doesn't look like it. Anything else you sort of want to bring up, Andre?
I would just say that, I personally believe this is a positive change, particularly because it affects the entire year. So we've had some statistics on the previous no detriment policy. So that one helped reclassify around 180 students. We generally have somewhere between 300 to 400 students every year that are within the borderline range. Not even talking about the extended borderline. So the impact of this policy might be slightly larger than the previous one, or one would hope. So I think that's the only thing that I wanted to note.
Okay, brilliant. So no one else wants to comment on that. We can move on to this vote on the opinion. It's not actually doesn't actually carry any weight, for want of a better word. It's just a gauge opinion, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, so actually I will post a comment into the chat, so if people can upvote it, if they wish to have another council. So we're having a Senate on the 3rd of March, which is a Wednesday, and then the policy will get reverted, and there will be formal approvals by the Senate subcommittees. That will happen on the 8th of March, which is a Monday of the following week. So I would want to schedule an additional single agenda student council meeting to vote, to have like an actual motion on the revised policy prior to it going to Senate, which will be on the 17th. So
an extraordinary student council meeting is what it is.
Yes. So I need 27 seconders to have additional meetings. So if I get 27 likes, I'll write up all of your names down and I'll send them to Matthew. But if that doesn't happen, then we cannot have additional meeting. And I promise to make it as short as I can.
Okay, so just to be clear for everyone, currently we've got a vote up in the chat to gauge opinion, but also Andre is going to put a comment in the chat which you can like or interact with in any way, and he will take that as you seconding his calling for a extraordinary meeting of student council next month. I believe I'm right in what I've just said. That's fine. Good. And
Harnum, depending on whether you're on phone or on a PC, if you're on a PC, you can just click on the like and it will add a like. If you're on a phone, you need to hold press it and hold it, and it will pop up.
Okay, so the result of that gauge of opinion is that 45 people say yes, 47 people, sorry, say yes, 2 say no, and 4 have abstained. So the opinion of council is of one of approvingness, I guess, there. And I guess you probably do have your 27 as well. I can't say. But you can continue to upvote that if you do want a extraordinary meeting of council. On that note, the next and final item on the agenda, which I was asked to speak about this evening, was that it was the feeling of some that because AUSA AGM is on the 19th of March and student council was the following week, that we might cancel March's council meeting, which is scheduled for the following Tuesday, which is the 23rd again, yeah. So the student council meeting on the 23rd is what we're proposing to council, because AUSA AGM is on the 19th, and it was the feeling of some that A, you would be seeing too much of my face chairing things, which isn't good for anyone, and secondly, that it might help attendance as well. Does anyone have any strong feelings on cancelling March's council? Obviously, Andre's just got enough to call for a extraordinary meeting anyway in March. But okay, Ivana.
Hello. I don't particularly agree with this because I have a motion that I would like to put forward in the March meeting that I don't think really needs to go through AGM, but I can try to put it forward in AGM if nobody else really wants to have the March meeting, I guess.
We will have a vote on this, so we're not just deciding based on discussion. It's just to get anyone's views on whether we should I can't speak, I'm stuttering. Cancel March council. Harnum.
Can I just ask for clarification? I didn't quite understand it when you said it the first time. Why are we cancelling March council?
See, it's difficult to say, isn't it? The feeling is, well, I've been told this, obviously I have no opinion on it because I'm impartial, but the feeling is that it will help because AGM is on the 19th and council is on the 23rd. It's to help improve attendance perhaps. And 2 seconds. AGM is the, yeah, basically just because they're so close together, it would, we don't want people to turn up to AGM and then no one to turn up to student council on the following Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah.
I believe, but I'm getting about 20 messages from people telling me reasons to say. Connor?
Hi there, just a quick clarification, I guess. Yeah. There might be some confusion because it looks like we're having a meeting in March now anyway for Andre. If Andre's meeting goes ahead, which it looks like it is, could other motions still be a part of that, aka for Ivana, for instance, and so on? And would it be before the AGM, perhaps? Maybe that might be something that people might appreciate. I don't know, though.
So Andre has got enough seconders to call an extraordinary meeting of council on the 8th of March. AGM is on the 19th. The proposed student council, well, the student council that is meant to be happening in March was on the 23rd. I don't know for sure the rules on whether an extraordinary AGM can only be, not an extraordinary AGM, an extraordinary council meeting can only be used for what we've asked it for, but I see Andre and Ellie, and we'll go to Andre, yeah.
I'll just comment quickly because we'll need to have that discussion before the formal meetings of the sub-Senate committees, which are at 3 p.m. So we'll probably need to council to end by 2 p.m. So it's not going to be after in the afternoon. So for
Yeah.
that reason, I would try to keep it as short as I can. And normally I would be okay with it if it was after, but I'm aware that people have classes and all that, so I don't want to keep them during the day that long.
Okay, so we'll just say that's not a possibility for ease of discussion. So Ellie, I don't know if you had your hand up there.
Sorry, I was just coming through as a, as someone with the staff point of view with bylaws, would be that extraordinary meetings are only for the purpose of the for the one specific topic that it's been called for. So for this instance, it would be for the no detriment policy, whatever the new name is. I'm sorry.
Discussion on protection from disadvantaged policy.
That's the one.
Keep up.
Sorry. So it would only be about that one. However, I will point out that AGM is the most representative forum for for motion. So if it's something that's going to be for the good of students, it would be possible. It is a good point for Ivana. You could put it forward at AGM. It's something the students can vote on, and it would be just as acted upon as if it was from council. So if that is the only worry you have about it being a about the meeting being cancelled, then you can rest assured that anything going to AGM is just as acted upon. But again, this is council's choice. So that was just on a point of like how things run. That's just to put things at ease. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Ellie. So yeah, has anyone got any other opinions on this? Okay, so I think what we'll do then is we'll go to a vote to cancel March's council meeting on the 23rd, whether we should do it or not. Disregard the fact that Andre has called an extraordinary meeting of council on the 8th of March. That is separate concern now. So if Ellie's got the vote there, we can vote on whether to continue to have a council meeting on the 23rd of March in the light of the fact the AGM is only 3 days beforehand. So this is just a yes or no to cancelling the March council meeting. Still waiting on a few responses. Make sure you pop your votes in. There's a link in the chat, or there's the card that pops up as well. And then we can get the results. Okay, we're just waiting on the results to come through. Just a couple of technical hitches, but that's no problem at all. We are used to them at this point. Just a note as well, I've been reminded that obviously we've seen in the chat that Andre has got enough seconders to hold his meeting, but that all needs to be confirmed as well. So, but to cancel the March council meeting, just 26 to I'll give it a couple of minutes because it is going back and forth, and I feel like if I say it then I jinx it. I'll give it till 15:15, which is 9 seconds. If anyone has any problems with that, get in touch. Okay, it's 15:15. Right, so that. Okay, am I okay to, Ellie, am I okay just to take that as, or is your internet still being slow?
No, it's okay. Poll's now closed.
Poll's closed. Okay, so with one vote in it, we have cancelled the March council meeting 28 to 27. Yeah. So March Council is cancelled, although the AGM is only a couple of days beforehand as well, to take note of that. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to discuss at this meeting of Council? Pop your hand up now. Andre.
I thought somebody would raise it, but I'm not saying that we won, but if we don't reach an AGM quorum by the time we get to motions, will we have the March Council? Because if there's no motions voted on by the AGM, and cancelling this one creates a window of 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I believe that would be the sensible thing to do, but obviously I can't say whether that would be what we would do. But Ellie has got her hand up, and she can say whether that is what we would do.
So, I believe that would possibly be the outcome that would be if we didn't meet quorum. I will have to check with Scott and Graham just to make sure that everything's okay with that. Obviously, if we do not make quorum for AGM, it would be back on the table that this would open up. So, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we are going to make quorum for AGM. But if we don't, then I will broach the subject with Scott and Graham, and we can put a post out about that. No problem.
Yeah, we will keep you all updated on extraordinary meetings, AGM, and whether March Council goes ahead in the end. Of course, Cecilia. Thanks, Ellie.
Cecilia, Student President, I just want to clarify that if we do not reach quorum for AGM, we will have to reconvene AGM 1 week later with half the quorum. So quorum at the moment is 200, means that the Friday afterward we would have to try again with 100 people, because hosting an AGM as a charity is like an actual thing we have to do by a law for you guys and everyone to hold AUSA to account, as we are using public money, and it would be good if people actually came and questioned us on that.
Okay, yeah, I suppose that answers that question then. If we don't make quorum, we probably wouldn't need to have a March meeting because we don't go just to the next Friday. This is all, Andre?
Just a clarification, I meant the situation that happened last year, because last year we've met the quorum, but we lost the quorum by the time we moved to motions. So AGM happened, just the motions didn't.
We've got plans in the works to hopefully keep quorum as well. Ellie, see the vote, does that, you said you closed the poll, or is that you didn't refresh before you shut the poll? Yeah, just take it away.
I'm not really sure, to be honest, but it looks like it's a bit of a tie at the moment. So it did just change. So right. The 50-50 vote, I'm not really sure where we go from that.
Flip a coin. Okay, we might need to actually check. Daniel. That hand up for a question.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the opportunity to vote there. Does that, like, I mean, I was, yeah, I don't know. If I could be a tiebreaker there to settle that.
I mean, we could run I think we should probably check the rules, to be fair, at this point. Ellie, if you've got them up, unless anyone knows the rules. I feel like I should know the rules.
It'll be in bylaw 3 if that's helpful.
Yeah.
I have bylaw 3 up. I'm just having a look.
I'm edging on. I'd be in favour of a re-vote, to be honest.
So, from my very quick skim over bylaw 3, I can see that there is no precedent set for if there is a 50-50 vote. So, with it being a 50-50 vote and it being unsure in the bylaw, it would be up to the chair to decide how we go forward, I believe. So, it's up to you how we do this.
Okay, I think we just... As much as I'm in favour of a good game of rock, paper, scissors, I feel like the democratic thing to do is to have a revote, Ellie, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, if you just give me 2 minutes to get the new vote up, new poll up, then I will be A-okay and we can do that.
Perfect. I'll go through what I was going to say at the end whilst you do that, Ellie. Just a reminder for everyone of what I said at the start, that we're still looking for... oh, Daniel's got his hand up. Was that just a legacy hand?
No, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Kieran, at all, but I would bring everybody's attention to Bylaw 36.4.6, which says that council shall normally meet monthly during term time, which make the motion to to remove the March meeting incompetent, in my view.
Right. Okay. I mean, this was raised. So yeah, the bylaw says normally. So I believe we get at the key word is indeed normally. So we'd get away around that, I suppose. And this has been done in the past as well. I've just been assured. So, you know, this was raised this afternoon with me, whether we cancelled March council. But I get where you're coming from there. But yeah, the key word in that is normally. But if you have any further issues to raise with that, then yeah, by all means, please do.
There's a new vote in the chat for you.
New vote in the chat. Daniel, is there anything else you want to say on that, or are you happy for us to?
No, please continue.
Thanks. Okay. So yeah, there's a revote in the chat for cancelling March council. So yeah, go vote. What I'll do this time is I'll say that we are definitively closing the poll at 25 minutes past. If everyone's okay with that, I feel like that's a sensible thing to do. So we'll close the poll at 25 minutes past. Just giving 2 minutes, Cecilia. Harnham?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because a few people have left the meeting since we first started a few hours ago. Do we still have quorum?
Yes, quorum is 27 or something, 29, 27.
Okay,
Someone
yes. Yeah, I'm well off then. My question. Thanks.
That's all right. Yes, so just to re-mention, while we wait for this vote to close at 25 minutes past, just to re-mention stuff I said at the start, the sabbatical elections are coming up still, so make sure people nominate if they would like any more information, have any questions, get in touch with any, I presume, any of the standing sabbatical officers or Ellie at AUSA reps at abdn.ac.uk, and there's candidate workshops all of this week. AGM, as we have discussed, is on the 19th of March. We need motions. It's a great chance. It's a lot more fuller attended than council. It's a great chance to get your point across and have a healthy debate and discussion. Obviously albeit in different circumstances to a normal AGM. So let us know if you need any help with that. We still need NUS Liberation delegates. So get in touch if you're interested in performing any of those roles. And sign up for the enhanced transcript pathway as well for being a councillor on Careers Connect. Daniel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, could I just ask what the process would be if, under the circumstances, if we? Oh, wait, sorry, sorry, never mind. I've just totally blanked on something. Never mind.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Let me know later if you remember. Ellie, we've got the results for that. The polls are shut. Doing my best to the impression. Okay, so this time seems more definitive. We've shut the polls. Should March meeting be cancelled? Yes, 24. No, 20. So we've cancelled that meeting. And we've got confirmation from Scott, I believe, that it doesn't infringe on any of the bylaws as well. I'm going to take that message from Scott as that not infringing on a bylaw. Daniel.
Could I just ask then, as per bylaw 36.4.2, where it says that additional meetings may be convened by the chair on written request of 30% of the current council members, would this not, sort of interfere with that in a certain way? Like if the current members decide to then write to you, would this not interfere with that vote, or even overturn it, perhaps?
Well, I someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but it would. You still have the ability to overturn that result. So at the moment, we've cancelled March council meeting, the one that was scheduled for the 23rd. But if anyone wished to write to me and to overturn that decision and had the backing of a sufficient amount of councillors as is written in the bylaws, then we could hold a meeting at that time as well, if people were to get in touch with me. And as we've already said, it looks like we're having an extraordinary meeting on the 8th of March in the early afternoon, followed by AGM on the 19th of March. And yeah, Ellie.
So just to say that with the bylaw, for extraordinary meetings, there must be a purpose for the meeting. So it would have to be for one single purpose. So you would have to have one single purpose for calling that meeting, and it would be only to discuss that single purpose. It would not be like every other meeting where we would have accountability sessions or policy updates. It would be, if you wanted for AK will use the one we're doing for example, you would have it called for, so Andre's meeting is literally just called to discuss the new no detriment policy, and that's it.
But then is the bylaw that Daniel's discussing not separate to the extraordinary meeting provision?
I believe that was the bylaw part he was mentioning, wasn't
it? Daniel, unless there's something different, or was it the extraordinary meeting one that you were discussing? Daniel, yeah.
Yeah, could I ask which bylaw provision is in it, relates to extraordinary meetings, please? Which point in the bylaws?
So it's not called an extraordinary meeting, it's called a subsequent meeting or something like that, and I'll just find the exact bylaw, 2 seconds.
.2. No, not 3.2. Never mind. Okay, so we're just checking the bylaws on that. Has anyone got any other questions, queries, or anything for me? Once that's there. Thanks, Connor.
So additional meeting, it's 6.4.2. We don't have anything in the bylaw that states that we have an extraordinary meeting. It's simply just called an additional meeting.
That might have been me that called it that by mistake, to be honest. Daniel?
Yeah, so that was the same point that I was looking at, and there's nothing in there as far as I can see that says that there can only be a single point on there. It just says that additional meetings can be convened by the chair on a written request of 30% of the current members, and that the council chair shall outline the order of and timing of the business.
I mean, if that's don't know who was it Andre or Cecilia that said that not Cecilia, someone else said that it had to, was Cecilia's hands up, so we'll go to Cecilia. Sorry, that's what I thought of it.
Cecilia, Student President, I was just going to suggest that we've already voted to cancel this meeting, and Andre has already gathered names for his extraordinary meeting. Maybe we keep this conversation offline because it's more like an offline and a technical question. I see that a lot of people already left, and I'm also aware that we got different time zones present. So it's pretty late for some people, and would you be happy to just take this conversation offline because it sounds more like a technical question rather than something that affects council right now?
Daniel, do you want to come back on that quickly?
I have no issue with the suggestion by the student president. To me, it seems like a straightforward issue, so we'll just take this offline. We have a little while to prepare for it anyway.
Brilliant, thanks. Okay, so just to be clear for everyone, we've at the moment we have cancelled the meeting of Student Council on the 23rd of March. But obviously, as always, there is provision, as displayed by Andre, to call a additional meeting of council if you meet the requirements of the bylaw, which we've just mentioned. And you can submit that in writing to me, and that will be communicated to all other councillors as well. So unless anyone has anything else, thank you very much for coming this evening. Sorry that we've gone on just a bit late, and stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon, and make sure you take heed of all the additional information we've given you regarding elections and other stuff as well. Get involved as much as you can, and get in touch with me if you've got any other queries or questions. Thank you. Bye-bye. See, I told you Ellie had finished 5 minutes before. As well, get involved as much as you can, and get in touch with me if you've got any other queries or questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.